Hey there, and welcome to the Visibility for Female Founders podcast. I'm your host, Radhika Lucas, and this podcast is for you. If you're an impact driven founder, coach, or consultant who wants to find your own voice to speak, present, and amplify your message online, we explore how to get past the visibility roadblocks and grow your capacity to be seen so you can attract and chase your perfect audience while staying connected to the most important things by building a business that works around your life. So, today I'm going to be talking about an unconventional way in which you can create a unique point of difference to market your business online. Now, this is something that I have been asked over and over again. I've heard this from so many people over the years, which is how exactly do I stand out? And not only that, but I think even more so now with the age of AI, where everything is typically becoming more and more commoditized, which is that the cost of information in the online space has been reduced drastically as a result of democratization of not only content, but also democratization of knowledge, where anyone now has access to being able to create content. But as a result, there is a lot more content in every single space. So whether you have a researcher background, for example, if you're from an academic profession, versus a professional services background, like say maybe you're a lawyer, a psychotherapist, or one of those professions, there is a self-help version on AI for almost every single thing. So the question really then becomes, which is not so much about how you can stand out with just the services that you offer, which is based on an exchange of knowledge, especially if you're in the knowledge space where you get remunerated for providing knowledge to people. That becomes increasingly difficult now with just, if you only think about it from an AI perspective. However, the real long-term view in all of this is about understanding and optimizing towards the thing that we are the best at and what we are best placed to do. It's like the highest and best use of our experience and services, which can now complement and enhance the AI experience. So it's going to be no surprise that with every profession, whether this be a person who might be wanting access to a psychotherapist or a psychologist and is actually just wanting to speak to an AI bot that can be a life coach and speak to this AI that gives them the advice that they need. And so, therefore, giving them that temporary band aid fix, which alleviates the need for psychotherapist help in that very instance. Now, that's not to say that every will end up in an AI-based solution. But the biggest thing and the biggest point of difference that we can build for ourselves is to optimize against what we are uniquely good at, which is a blend of our own voice. And when I mean the blend of our own voice, it is actually combining the things that we are very well placed at getting to our customers as being the conduits that can actually help bridge the gap between the AI experience and the human connection. And so the unconventional part about this is that up until now, we were very much in a space where we could pick or choose one or two or three different things that we could hang our hat on and say, okay, well, we're actually going to be marketing our business using two or three channels, and we're going to be consistent in those and keep doing those. And whilst some of those fundamentals are still true, what is becoming more and more important is for us to surface in information which is AI driven, but also with our own voice led narrative. So things such as creating content with our own voice. And that's not necessarily a podcast, because this is obviously to do with a podcast. But when I say voice led narratives, which is leading with our voice from a human experience perspective, that we can then act as the bridge between the problems that people have and the solutions that you offer in a bridge based storytelling format, which isn't necessarily about our own stories, but actually about helping people get to a solution with the insights that we've developed as part of the stories of our successes and failures. It's no longer enough to be sitting on a pedestal going, I've got the answers to everything, especially if you're in the knowledge space and you're exchanging knowledge. You need to be able to meet people where they are at, because where they're at may not be in the same service that you provide. And I'll give you a very concrete example of that from one of my clients who was a lawyer. So with this particular client, her clients actually end up delaying the process of creating a will. And so when we start looking at the issues that these clients might have, these clients are actually doing all kinds of things. They're planning their holidays, they're buying Christmas presents, they're living their life. And whilst they might have the will that they need to do, it's not something that they're actively thinking of. So an unconventional approach for a lawyer wouldn't be to, yes, talk about the will that this person clearly offers as a service. However, it is also important to meet people where they are by addressing the elephant in the room, which is to talk about the suitcases that they're packing to go on their holiday, or the Christmas gifts that they're buying for their loved ones, when actually their loved ones might actually be left with a really terrible thing beyond the gift, if they were no longer to be around. So the unconventional part now has becoming visible from a topical perspective. So in the moment, based on what's happening around. So if it's Christmas time, then obviously this would be highly relevant. But more importantly, coming at it from a personality driven perspective, because as founders in our business, what's really important is that people are actually choosing to work with us based on our personalities that resonate with them, because they either like something about the way in which we go about things, and they have higher resonance with what it is that we're trying to say. But also importantly, the fact that if we can translate our narratives, so with our voice led narratives, to meet people where they're at with their problems, it creates a cycle where, with enough drops of seeds, kind of almost like, the breadcrumbs that Gretel had when she was walking through the forest to get to the gingerbread house. You're dropping those breadcrumbs so that people can actually follow the trail and, well, hopefully not get eaten by a witch, but like actually getting to the gingerbread house by giving you the breadcrumbs that they can find along the way, because you're giving them small hints that I get you, I get you, I get you. And then there are lots of little touch points along the way that can remind them of who you are as a person in that topicality, but also considering the visibility ecosystem of this specific client. So voice-led narratives are going to be able to offer a unique way in which for you to be able to stand out, not only in being able to build a brand around your presence, but doing it in a way that encompasses your customer 360 degrees. So what I mean by that is being available in their top of mind presence and not forgetting the audience that you already have, by being visible in spaces where people don't actually yet know you, and that they can search you through the solutions that you might be offering. And when they do search you, and when they do come in and find the topicality of the content that you're creating from a voice-led narrative perspective, that there is high resonance based on what they find when they actually get to your, whether it be your website, whether it be your social content. It is all creating in an ecosystem which is there and delivered for you to be able to stand out in a way that is driven by the being the conduit, firstly, for the people, those who are your clients and your business. So using the example of one of the professional services that I gave an example about, which is the lawyer who had the issue with her clients not creating their wills on time. There are 4 ways in which your brand can become unique. And one of them is by having voice-led narratives in this way, and in showcasing this example using topicality as one of the ways in which you can do that, is firstly to really be able to speak to people's inner and outer problems. By doing that, what you're going to be able to do is you're firstly going to be able to build that trust that you need through relatability. Now, we know that we've heard the term, how to be authentic. And then there's a lot of people that say, well, you need to be vulnerable. Well, what exactly does vulnerable really mean? How does a lawyer end up being vulnerable online? I think the issue with this is that it's not actually quantified to a specific profession, and because not all professions can really be vulnerable. And that is the other issue that comes up, is that there is this one size fits all marketing advice that's out there on the internet, which talks about authenticity, but doesn't actually quantify what authenticity really means. And what authenticity really means is actually really optimizing to what you're really good at. Now, with an example of one of my clients, one of her voice territories was family. So the unconventional approach that we used for this specific client was, if you think about, for example, using content pillars as an example, right? Most lawyers would probably talk about wills, they might talk about trust deeds, they might talk about, estates, they might talk about, I don't know, whatever else they might talk about, right? So you would think that they would have all of these stock standard ways in which to communicate about what it is that they do. Well, my client actually had three distinct, unique territories that we worked on. And one of them was the principle of knowledge. Now, if we think about the kind of knowledge that my client has, I asked her to think about all of the problems that her clients have, which she can give knowledge about. So, for example, some of the things that came up were delay. They'll try and avoid things. They have unhappy relationships. They're leaving people out of their will. They have problems within their relationships that they need to fix in order to go forward. They want fast track solutions. They want something that they can implement straight away. So, if you think about all of these problems that people have, and the solution, which is the knowledge, which is one of the themes for my clients, it's actually about mapping how the knowledge transference can be packaged up in a way that actually meets people where they are for all of those instances. And so the solution then becomes more tailored towards the thing that you are actually very good at, which is the thing that I mentioned earlier, which is optimizing towards a set of, they're not really even values, but they're actually integral to your personality. They're almost like a hybrid between the things that you are very good at, like your strengths, as well as your values. So I guess you could call them a blend of your strengths and your values. And at any one given point in time, it's kind of like a deck of cards where you've got to have 3 or 4 different cards in your deck of cards that you can deal at any one point, that will then change and morph as maybe time goes on. But let's say my client had another territory, which was actually about approachability. How might this person show up in a way that reflected all that they stood for? So showing up in a way that was approachable would look like having a fun personality, doing something that was out of the box, doing something that was a pattern interrupt, that was unusual for that particular space. It's not usual for a lawyer to be sitting on a digger in her backyard, which is exactly what my client did in this particular situation or in this particular instance. So it's about doing something that's going to shake up the status quo. And so that you're not just using the same old tired strategies that everybody's using, and that you're actually trying to create something with a unique point of difference based on who you are, being the connector, being the conduit, being the person who has a blend of your professional services, your skills, your hard experience, that you can give in exchange for something that only you are uniquely positioned to do. And so the four ways in which doing this is going to help, based on the example that I've given, is firstly, it's going to fast track building trust using relatability. Now, the people who are going to like this approachability in a lawyer, given that most lawyers are feared or looked upon as being unreachable or perhaps a little bit scary, is that it instantly breaks down barriers. The second one is about how you can inject an element of urgency based on topicality using the Christmas example that I gave earlier, which is very connected to this person's offering that she has. Well, if you're in December, or if you're coming up to in November and December, then a great way of going about it is actually talking about the very things to do with avoidance and delay that people are doing anyway. And so having that point of difference gives you that little bit of urgency with having something that you can offer in return for that quick win that people are looking for as a bonus when they actually come in and start doing work with you. The third one is do something different, which is a pattern interrupt. In this situation, this client of mine actually used a really unconventional setting to create a reel. It wasn't a stock standard reel. It was actually a very creative reel in which there was quite a lot of effort involved, but it gave a really great launch pad in which to actually make a splash and create something that was truly unique. And then the fourth one is create a buzz. You know, when you start doing something, you actually attract a lot of attention, kind of like flies to a honeypot. And that's where you start creating that magnetism, because you are in high energy based on a combination of your strengths and your values. So it's not just values, it's actually your strengths as well. And then you're blending them and becoming that conduit, which becomes almost completely irreplaceable. You end up becoming a category of one in your space because you're so unique in the way in which you're positioning your services that people have no other choice but to actually pick you, because you are clearly standing out by that stage by doing all of those things. So I'm hoping that this is helping you with some penny drops. And if it is helping you with some penny drops, and if you are energized with this conversation and keen to hear more, then get in touch with me from my website. Let's connect and hear more about what your business, you're energized by this. Then go and look up the helpful resource that is at the bottom of the show notes in this podcast episode. You can connect with me on any of the channels. Let me know what you thought about this. Let me know what your business is so that I might be able to help you with understanding your unique positioning territory so that you can stand out with a unique point of difference. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you loved it, leave a review so that more people can find it. There's going to be a unique proposition and a unique way for someone to position themselves based entirely on who they are as people. So go ahead, leave a review, share this episode with people who you know who might be struggling and would love to know and find out more. Send me a message on Instagram at @contenthalo. Would love to hear from you, and hope you enjoyed this episode. I'll see you in the next one.